Welcome to the overview of the Hospital Incident Management Team. The purpose of this course is to describe the structure and roles of the Hospital Incident Management Team, with primary emphasis on the 5 primary management components, including command, operations, logistics, planning, and finance and administration. The leadership and subordinate positions of each section will be explored. Several examples are given to highlight the application of these sections and positions. Positions are assigned only as indicated by an assessment of the scope and magnitude of the particular incident or event, and the availability of trained personnel to assume a role. This course also introduces a key tool called a Job Action Sheet, developed for hospitals by the Emergency Medical Services Authority in California for their HICS program. A job action sheet is available for each position within the HICS system and is a key tool in the program. This tool provides specific position guidance for each member of the hospital incident management team by describing their individual responsibilities, reporting relationships, needed forms, and potential action steps based on consecutive response time periods. The job action sheet is organized like a checklist, so that it can also be used as a documentation tool to track time and task completion. In an incident command system-based organization, 5 management functions are considered: command, operations, logistics, planning, and finance and administration. The incident commander is the only position always activated, and is responsible for the management of the incident within the hospital. The incident commander directs all activities within the hospital command center and establishes the objectives of the incident response. The operations function, which is assigned to the operations section chief, is responsible for developing strategies and tactics for carrying out the major work of meeting those goals set by command. The operations section chief establishes the best way to accomplish the objectives for each operational period and has direct involvement in the preparation of the incident action plan. Leadership of the operations section is a critical function for the ICS organization. This position is often considered as the second in command. Typically, the operations section chief is the person with the most knowledge and experience for the event impacting the hospital. There are many individual functions to be performed in the operations section, far more than could be managed effectively by the operations section chief alone. This means that several of these functions will be delegated to subordinates based on the work needing to be performed. In the hospital setting, this work can be subdivided into medical care, infrastructure, business continuity, hazardous materials, security, and patient family assistance branches. These 6 branches are included in the operations section because each provides services that are essential to delivering patient care. A branch director leads each branch. In addition to the various branches, the operations section chief also depends upon a staging manager to oversee the staging of resources and material. As always in ICS, activation of any resource is dependent on need. ICS relies heavily on resource management. A truly resilient management team is always aware of resource demands and availability and shifts them fluidly as required. Each person or piece of equipment is considered a resource that should be positioned or staged in a designated location called a staging area to enhance efficiency. A good manager is required to lead this space. In HICS, a staging manager fills this function. This manager works closely with the logistics section to learn what is needed and ensure that the requested items are delivered to the correct location as soon as possible. In turn, the logistics section works to obtain those needed items and directs their arrival to the staging area. Some incidents require more than one staging area with a team leader assigned to coordinate each type of asset being staged. For example, a personnel staging team leader or a medication staging team leader. The medical care branch of the operations section is responsible for ensuring care is provided to incident victims, non-incident related arrivals, as well as patients already in the hospital. This branch's director works with the logistics section to ensure medical care resources such as personnel, equipment, medications, and supplies are requested, and with the staging manager to ensure their delivery. This may include the activation of subunits to manage inpatient and outpatient needs, casualty care, behavioral health, clinical support services, and patient registration. The inpatient unit leader assures treatment of inpatients, manages the inpatient care areas, and provides for a controlled patient discharge. The outpatient unit leader organizes and manages the delivery of outpatient services to meet the needs of existing patients and those that are incident-related. The casualty care unit leader is responsible for the delivery of emergency care to arriving patients and will usually be located in the emergency department. This may involve identifying additional treatment areas, implementing triage, and appointing additional staff to assist in the delivery of care. As usual, all of these activities should comply with established hospital plans and protocols. The behavioral health unit leader addresses issues related to the mental health of patients, their family, and staff. The clinical support services unit leader organizes and manages clinical support resources including pharmacy, radiology, labs, and others. Finally, the patient registration unit leader coordinates all inpatient and outpatient registration to avoid delays in medical care and facilitate patient tracking. The infrastructure branch is responsible for the overall facility operations and works to support the efforts of the medical care branch. Their responsibilities include maintaining the hospital's operational capability, including utilities, ventilation, medical gases and devices, and building grounds. If an incident damages the hospital, the incident commander or infrastructure branch director may assign an assessment strike team that can address the damages. When incidents have no patient care component, for example a water or medical gas failure, the infrastructure branch may be the only active branch in the operations section. This is a good example of how the incident command system can be flexed for any incident. The business continuity branch ensures that critical business functions such as patient records, purchasing contracts, and information technology systems and applications are maintained, restored, or augmented to meet incident management and recovery objectives. This is done by facilitating recovery resources and supporting the other ICS sections to restore business functions and resume normal operations. The business continuity branch will probably be activated only for incidents that have a moderate impact on normal business operations. In situations involving a hazardous material release, the incident commander may choose to activate the hazardous materials branch under the operations section. The hazardous materials branch director will have the personnel and equipment to address agent identification, spill response, and decontamination of people, equipment, and the facility. Having a designated decon area that can be quickly established and is suitable in size and flow to accommodate patient processing needs is vital. Unlike other areas of the ICS, decontamination demands a level of required pre-incident training. Not every staff member can serve as a member of the decontamination team simply by following a job action sheet. The hospital emergency decontamination response plan should have specific policies and procedures in place for responding to a hazardous materials incident. During any emergency, security plays a major role in incident management. Decisions related to site security must be made early into the event by the incident commander in conjunction with other senior command staff and the security branch director. The security branch director is responsible for coordinating all of the activities related to personnel and facility security such as access, crowd and traffic control, and law enforcement interface. When necessary, unit leaders can be assigned to manage each of those objectives. In addition, the security branch director will be working closely with the safety officer to ensure the incident is managed effectively and that response personnel, patients and visitors understand any new restrictions in place for the duration of the incident. The Patient Family Assistance Branch is responsible for providing assistance to patients and their families arriving to seek care during an emergency. Support includes providing food and refreshments and ensuring access to phones, social services, and behavioral health needs. These services are coordinated and obtained from corresponding unit leaders from both the operations and logistics sections. The Family Reunification Unit Leader will take the lead in assisting families to locate their loved ones or friends through the hospital's patient tracking program, coordinated by the Planning Section, or the community's patient location system by working with the liaison officer. The entire structure of the ICS organization is designed for flexible implementation. The Operations Section Chief considers the objectives established by the incident commander and decides the best strategies and tactics that take into account how best to use based on available resources. The Operations Section Chief will establish branches, groups, or units within the Operations Section as needed to carry out the activities. The ICS management structure should never constrain its leaders. Rather, it should be flexed to meet the incident needs, always remembering to maintain a manageable span of control at every level. To demonstrate ICS flexibility, imagine 20 children are severely injured from a school bus accident. The hospital's Operations Section Chief decides on 4 objectives and assigns them to personnel. Which personnel should be assigned to execute Objective 1? Click on the appropriate role. Since there are only 3 unit leaders established for this incident, the Operations Section Chief is within a manageable span of control and need not establish branches or groups within the section. Each of the unit leaders will report directly to the Operations Section Chief. As an incident evolves, the Operations Section Chief will reevaluate the objectives and assignments and make changes to the organization as needed. The key to successful management of any section is to continually cycle through a process of subjective and objective assessment and planning, where planning leads to development of objectives that are then assigned as needed to maintain a manageable span of control. As we have seen, the Operations Section is responsible for carrying out the major work during an incident. In order to do this, they require considerable support. The primary source of support is the Logistics Section, which is responsible for acquiring resources from internal and external sources. These resources are requested from various sections of the ICS using established procedures and chain of command. The Logistics Section is responsible for all support requirements and can be subdivided into 2 branches. The Service Branch is responsible for supporting communication, information technology, and food services for staff. The Support Branch is responsible for acquiring needed supplies, coordinating internal and external transportation needs, and acquiring and credentialing additional personnel. In addition, the Support Branch coordinates employee and behavioral health and staff family care. When activated, each service and support unit would have a unit leader providing command and control. As with the Operations Section, leadership of the Logistics Section is a critical function for the ICS organization. This position is generally assigned to the senior executive or administrator who manages support services, facilities, or engineering functions for the hospital. The Planning Section is responsible for gathering, documenting, analyzing, and disseminating situational information and intelligence regarding the incident and the organization's response. This section is also in charge of tracking the status of resources, maintaining and displaying situation status, and preparing a demobilization plan. One of the most important functions of the section is to look beyond the current and next operational period in order to anticipate potential problems or events. This information is then used by the section to formulate a course of action to meet those goals set by the command section. This course of action is often compiled into a formal Incident Action Plan, or IAP. The IAP contains general objectives for the overall incident strategy and specific action plans for the next operational period. In addition, the IAP defines the resources needed, depicts how personnel are to be organized, and identifies resources at risk. Copies of the plan should be given to supervisory personnel at the section, branch, division, and unit leader levels, and all command staff and all section staff contribute to and use IAPs as part of their roles and responsibilities. A tool commonly used by this section is the Planning P, which provides a visual guide to the process and steps involved in planning for an incident. This guide can be used informally as a mental checklist for most incidents, or formally for more complex and prolonged events. The base or leg of the P describes the initial response period, notifications, initial response and assessment, incident briefing, and the initial incident command meeting. The first operational period begins at the top of the base, and then in a circular fashion each meeting and task is provided in sequence to help keep the planning process one step ahead of the response. The planning cycle starts with the incident commander establishing incident objectives and then breaking them down into tactical assignments for each operational period. Next, the incident commander meets with command and general staff to gather input or provide immediate direction. During the tactics meeting, the operations section chief develops a strategy to achieve incident objectives and determine resources needed to accomplish them. Next, preparations are made for the planning meeting, which provides the command and general staff with the opportunity to review and validate the strategies and tactics proposed by the operations section. This meeting is conducted by the planning section chief, who then develops a plan in coordination with the logistics section. Once the incident action plan is developed, it is presented to the incident commander for approval and signing. The operations briefing is conducted prior to the beginning of each operational period. The incident commander presents an overview of the event and current status of deployed resources. Planning then presents the incident action plan to supervisors of tactical resources. All section chiefs are present to answer any questions supervisory staff may have. Each supervisor will then assemble staff assigned to them and brief them on their portion of the overall plan. Finally, at the designated start time of the next operational period, all personnel implement their portion of the plan. The planning cycle starts again at the beginning of the next operational period, continuing until the demobilization plan is presented and implemented. Leadership of the planning section is a critical function for the ICS-based organization. The primary assignment of this position should be to a high-level administrator who is normally in charge of strategic planning or human resources. This person should be good at developing strategy in response to a wide variety of situations. It is essential that the planning section chief demonstrates strong leadership skills during normal business operations, because this person will be key in managing and guiding the direction of the response. There are 4 units in the planning section, each of which is directed by a unit leader. These include the resources, situation, documentation, and demobilization units. The resource unit leader tracks information on the status, location, and availability of resources during the incident. Resources include personnel, teams, facilities, supplies, and equipment, which can be categorized as assigned, available, or out of service. The resource unit maintains a system for tracking the status of all resources assigned to the incident. Personnel and material tracking managers may be appointed to assist the unit leader when necessary. The status of a resource changes throughout an incident response. For example, an oxygen bottle is removed from the resource's staging area and put into use. Its status is changed from available to assigned. If the bottle is emptied, its status changes from assigned to out of service. If it is refilled and placed back into the staging area, its status changes once again from out of service to available. Resources within the staging area are available and ready for assignment. Resources in or out of service status are not located at the staging area. Any time that a person changes the status of a resource, that person must notify the resource unit. As always, incident response requires a team effort and strict adherence to procedure. Nowhere is this more apparent than in resource management. To ensure that supervisors get the proper resources needed, ICS categorizes them by kinds of resources and types of resources. Kinds of resources describe what the resource is, for example, patient transporter, wheelchair, or ventilator. Types of resources describe the size, capability, and staffing qualifications for a kind of resource. For example, a patient transporter who can help carry an adult patient downstairs, an extra-wide wheelchair, or a ventilator for a neonatal patient. Requesting a resource kind without specifying a resource type could result in an inadequate resource arriving on the scene. For example, during a snowstorm, a path must be cleared to allow entrance into the ambulance bay. If only a truck is requested, the arriving vehicle may not be capable of removing the snow. The request instead needs to be more specific, a 1-ton truck with a snowplow. Resource types range from Type 1, most capable, to Type 4, least capable, letting you reserve the appropriate level of resources for your incident by describing the size, capability, and staffing qualifications of a specific resource. The Situation Unit collects, processes, and organizes ongoing situation information, such as patient numbers and conditions. This information is used to prepare incident summaries and develop projections of future events as well as options for response. For instance, in the case of a surge of patients from a factory explosion, the Situation Unit gets information from the scene about the number of casualties and their conditions. This information is used by the Planning section to anticipate the resources needed to manage these patients and prepare options for the incident commander. As situations change, the Situation Unit leader updates the status and therefore the plan. This is classical planning where a situation is evaluated, options are developed, plans are implemented, and then reviewed. Based on their effect, new situations are evaluated and the cycle continues. Patient and bed tracking managers may be appointed as needed to assist the Situation Unit leader with patient location assignments and communication with the hospital command center. Documentation is a key aspect of the ICS. The Documentation Unit leader works with members of the incident management team to record information from the response. This may include details on the incident, organizational assignments, problems encountered, and resources used and requested. Information may originate from the incident scene, the hospital service areas, or from the hospital command center. The effective use of prepared forms can make the Documentation Unit's job easier and more accurate. FEMA has created a set of standardized forms, many of which have been modified for use in HICS. It is important to complete forms accurately and follow instructions closely. The Planning section is responsible for maintaining a continual record of the hospital's incident action plans and forms so that incident command personnel can refer back to them if needed. This record will be used to document the hospital's response activities and decision-making processes during and after the incident. At the conclusion of an incident or as resources are no longer needed, it is wise to follow a plan for stepping down the response. The Demobilization Unit creates a plan that includes instructions for demobilizing resources. The assignment of this unit's leader should be given to someone with strong knowledge of the business continuity plan and normal business operations. In review, the Operations section is responsible for carrying out the major work of the organization during an incident. The primary source of support that enables the Operations section to meet the incident commander's goals comes from the Logistics section. In order for incident planning to be accomplished, The planning section gathers the necessary information and intelligence, conducts planning meetings, and prepares the incident action plan for each operational period. What remains to be done in the management scheme is to pay the bills and provide administrative services such as personnel timekeeping. These are the functions of the Finance and Administration section. Leadership of this section is generally assigned to the Chief Financial Officer, Chief Information Officer, or senior executive who manages administrative or financial functions for the hospital. The Finance section monitors finances, oversees acquisitions, documents expenditures, and establishes cost recovery processes. To speed the incident response, normal resource procurement restrictions are often waived. Unless done systematically, this can result in a lack of accountability that can lead to the hospital bearing the financial burden of the response. Good financial documentation helps in cost recovery and reimbursement efforts with responsible parties, government agencies, and insurance companies. The Finance section may also coordinate personnel time and compensation, procure resources, and track the payment of invoices. This section is also responsible for financial concerns resulting from property damage, injuries, or fatalities at the incident. During the often chaotic nature of an incident or event, it is essential that all personnel assigned to the hospital incident management team wear identification that communicates their role or position. For this purpose, most hospitals use vests that have the position title clearly printed on both the front and back in bold lettering. The vests may be color-coded to coordinate with the Hicks Hospital Incident Management Team Chart. White, Command. Red, Operations. Blue, Planning. Yellow, Logistics. And green, Finance Administration. Ideally, there should be at least 3 trained staff for each hospital incident management team position to ensure adequate coverage, especially for incidents and events that extend beyond multiple operational periods. Training and exercises should be used as a means of preparing personnel to assume one or more roles based on situational need and available resources. In this course, we have presented the functions, general responsibilities, and leadership considerations for the 4 sections below command in the Hospital Incident Command System. This information should be reviewed together with the associated job action sheets, which provided detailed task descriptions for each position. The Operations and Logistics sections represent the bulk of the emergency incident response work in a healthcare organization. The Planning and Finance sections represent the important back-office emergency incident response work in a healthcare organization, which are essential in order to ensure effective and sustained incident management.